it's Karen Burniston, and I'm here today to show how to assemble one of my die sets. This is number 1007, the Charm Accordion, and you can check out all of my designs at karenburniston.com. I've put all 11 of the dies that come in the set on this magnet sheet to help me while I'm making the video. One thing that I really like to think about when I'm designing die sets is to put enough function and versatility in the set itself to where you can make a really impressive card using just that set. So in this case, 5 different charms. They're nice, good, generic, year-round charms. I'm going to start first by cutting the card itself. So that's this big die here. And I do recommend that you start with a nice stiff cardstock. So something like a 100-pounder would be great. Now you can use my dies in any of your major die cutting machines, anything that can accommodate a wafer thin die, and I'm using a Sizzix Big Shot today. I'm just going to make my sandwich like usual and roll that right through the machine. So this is going to cut that 2-page card base for a Charm Accordion, so it's already going to be attached both sides. You're just going to need to work the folds and add the charm frame. The charm frame doesn't have to be the same color as the card base. I'm going to switch to a brown cardstock here, but I'm also going to use a stiff cardstock. So in terms of the card base and the charm frame, I definitely recommend a nice, strong, stiff cardstock. And I'm also going to cut one of those little corner pieces while I'm in the business of die cutting. And that's a fun little flourish. It can be used in lots of ways. You can see it fits perfectly right in the corner, but you can also use it kind of top and bottom. Okay, let's talk about the charm frame itself. The die actually cuts 3 pieces at one time. On the outside of it is the charm frame, so that's what we're going to use to assemble the card. Got tabs on the side, a little hole at the top. And then die cut at the same time is a square frame and the hinge piece. So the hinge piece is used when you want to expand the accordion into multiple page accordions. So I'm going to use the heart charm today for my sample. I'm cutting that out of a pink cardstock, and then out of a metallic silver cardstock, I've cut the die that does the 4 jump rings. So these are little paper jump rings that'll allow you to easily hang your charms. So if you look at the shape of these, they're basically almost a circle, but they overlap a little bit. And based on that shape, they're really easy to use, and they don't usually separate again and allow your charm to fall off. Now you could always, after you use the paper jump ring, you could seal it with a little bit of glue. I generally don't do that, but if you were worried about it, you could. I have found that if I put the end of the jump ring from behind the frame through the little hole, and then I kind of spin that around, and then now it's ready to add the charm. Okay, now you, the audience, are looking at the front of that charm frame right now. So as I add the charm, if there were a front to it, I would want to make sure that that was pointed towards you as I slid that charm onto that jump ring. And then once it clears the overlap, it's generally locked into place. So I haven't really found that they come off. I suppose it sort of depends on, the strength of the cardstock you used for the jump ring itself. Okay, always a good idea with strong cardstock to work those folds before you assemble. So I'm going to go ahead and work the center fold on my card base, and I'm going to pivot each of my squares, and the idea is that they pivot towards the outside so that the insides come together, just like you see there. And then I'm going to flatten that back out again. Now on the charm frame itself, it's got tabs on the side. It doesn't really matter which way you fold them. I just think it's easiest to fold them in the direction that the die has hit the paper. So even though these will eventually be a mountain fold, it's generally easier to train everything as a valley at this point. So there's a valley up the middle and then my 2 tabs. So now all of those tabs have been worked. We want everything flat again. And the idea is those tabs will glue there behind those pivoting squares. My personal favorite bottle to get a fine line of glue is actually called a fine line bottle, and I like to use the 20 gauge bottle, and I've got mine filled with Lineco neutral pH adhesive. It actually doesn't matter where along the square the charm frame is attached, so you can definitely experiment with having that maybe a little higher or a little lower. I'm going to just go ahead and center it, and all I want to do is just press each of those pivoting squares to one of those tabs on the charm frame and just press it until it sets up. And that is all there is to it. Now it is just a matter of training it and then decorating it. So on the pivoting squares, remember they pivot away from the center, so you can get your hands there onto the squares themselves, pivot those to go outwards while the card folds in the usual direction. And don't worry at first which way the charm frame is going to fold. Most likely it'll fold like a mountain, and as you see there, the card still works. You can experiment even with having it be a mountain fold. I think it looks the best in the closed position if you actually invert that center fold so that the charm frame ends up being a valley fold in between the two pivoting squares. So basically it collapses on itself and hides itself behind those squares when the card is closed. That's my favorite, but it works either way. So just have fun with experimenting with that. Now, a really great side benefit of having that charm frame in there, in addition to it just looking cute, is that it allows this card to still open up fully flat even after you've assembled it, so that you can decorate it after you've got that charm frame in there. So that just kind of makes it easier on you. And of course, the die set comes with a bunch of pieces to decorate, different squares. You've got a stitch square, you've got a solid square, and you can even use your charm frame on the pages themselves, just cut off the tabs. So let me show a couple of those ideas. Here's a couple of the bigger stitched frames. That could obviously be a contrasting color, or if you just want to add a little bit of stitch detail, just cut it in the same color. Then also you can use, like I said, that charm frame, you can use that without the tabs, just cut them off, and that solid square actually fits perfectly behind the charm frame. If you want to get some contrast behind your charm, you can use that solid square, and you'll see that just in the corners, the solid square isn't rounded, but the charm frame is, so you would just need to snip the corners of that brown square. Then you could glue it up behind that charm frame and get some contrast. Plus there's the skinny square that came out when the charm frame and the hinge were cut. And then there's that really cool corner flourish, and that fits obviously in all the corners, but you could use it top and bottom. You could chop it up and use it like a flourish. So lots of things you can do with it. For my card today, I'm going to put it in the 4 outside corners. Okay, when you have flattened out your card for decorating, most likely you're going to need to retrain it. So again, that's a matter of getting the squares to pivot to the outside while you fold the card. Even if the charm frame becomes a mountain, just let it do what it wants to do, and then go in there and reverse that fold in the middle so that it remembers to be a valley. And then you can collapse that down, give everything a really good press in the closed position. And you might also choose to decorate the front of the card. So when it's closed up, maybe you add some more of those corners and give that a little decoration as well. So what people most comment on this card is that they love the little size of it. So it's 3 1/4 by 4 1/4 when it's folded up, and it's got 2-inch pivoting squares. And it's still surprisingly a solid looking card, even though it is kind of a miniature, but it works great to mail it just in your standard A2 envelope. So I also love that this die really has no theme to it. You can make it any theme. And once again, you can use basically just the pieces in the set. I've added the congrats from the word set #1, but otherwise these are just the charms and the squares and the corners that come with the Charm Accordion set. But I also like to think about how all of the dies in a collection are going to coordinate together. So as you build your collection, everything works together. In this case, the birthday charms, which are an add-on, but they're sized to perfectly fit the Charm Accordion. The little woodland animals, that's where the squirrel came from. The nature edges for the hills along the bottom, and in this case, word set #2, which is birthday greetings. Okay, now let's talk about that hinge die and how it might be used to make longer accordions. So what I've done here is we've got my little basic accordion that I made in the first segment, and I've done that exact card again. And now what I want to do is use the hinge die to join those two together to make a 4-page accordion. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that hinge die here in the center of my card and glue that between the 2 pages so that they are then hinged together. Now, it's probably a good idea to use more than 1 hinge die, but you can see from my choice of where to put my decorations here, I've got my flourishes in the way to be able to add more hinges to the front of the card. But that's no big deal because I can also add them to the back. The other thing I want to add to the back of the card is another charm frame and charm. So that, as I turn my card to the back, can just glue right there between the 2 sets of pivoting squares using those tabs that are on the charm frame and adding my glue. Then I'm just going to go in there and use that charm frame to attach my sets of pivoting squares together and to add a 3rd charm. It's not going to be super visible on the front, that 3rd charm, because it'll be behind the structure of the card, but when you look at it from the side or from the top, you'll see that charm hanging in there. So it does add a little something. And then I just need to train that center fold of that charm frame so that it tucks now in between the two pivoting squares in the closed position. So just like I did for the other two charms on the front of the card, I'm going to do the same method on the back of the card where I bring the two pivoting squares to each other so that the charm frame folds up the middle and tucks now between those two squares. And then I can also add some glue to a couple more hinges and actually glue those to the back of the card so that they don't go over the top of my fun little flourishes on the front of the card. And then just go in there and get that pressed into place, and then I'll add another one near the top. So definitely a good idea to use at least 2 hinges when you're joining charm accordions together. Okay, so I have some more decorating to do to finish this card, and luckily I can still flatten it out completely to do that decorating. When I'm ready to fold it up, I'll just train it like this. It's going to collapse down into that cute little card. It will still fit in that same A2 envelope. And you may have to watch the thickness of it in terms of postage. If it gets over 1/2 inch thick, then you do have to add some extra postage to it. But despite its small size, it's really quite an impressive card. So here's how I finished out the decoration of my card. I made it a birthday card, and I used the small cupcake from the Cupcake Pop-Up die set. The second panel has the raccoon from the Woodland Animals die set. The greeting is from word set number 2, the birthday greetings. I went with Make-A-Wish. And for my cupcake and my raccoon panels, I used the Clouds Edger from the Nature Edges to give them a fun backdrop. And I just love how this card looks and how it operates. It's so fun that it folds down and has so much interactivity to it. So I'll show just a couple more samples to, show different ways to use the pieces and combine them. In this case, a 4-pager using basically just the pieces that come in the set with the addition of the word thanks from word set number 1. And what you're seeing hanging in the charm frame there is the little apple charm. And I think this would be a really cute teacher thank you card. And you can make those charms shine with glossy accents. Okay, here is a 4-pager, little hello card where I've used glitter paper for the flower charm, and I've used some rhinestones in the middle of the star charm. So lots of ways to dress these charms up. You can also use those corners as top and bottom flourishes, and it really does give it a completely different look. If you click on the website link, you'll go to KarenBurniston.com. You'll find information about where you can purchase these dies, as well as links to all of my other social media accounts. You can subscribe to this YouTube channel and check out some of my other videos. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.